I'm Lucas Kendall, and welcome to my imaginary YouTube show. And this is my friend Charlie Vignola. And I'm a Jew, he's Italian, and we're going to talk about screenwriting.
Yep.
And so I always like to just cut to the chase. And Charlie was at Bruckheimer for 30 years, and you have your own business, which is called Script Genius. And Charlie,
Genius, a script consulting business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Charlie, why do most amateur scripts suck?
Because they have bad ideas mostly right off the bat. Before anything else happens, you're going to be graded on the quality of your premise. And if your premise is not interesting enough, novel enough, engaging enough, tantalizing enough, special enough, I'm not going to care about anything else because I'm not really going to be paying attention. If the idea isn't intriguing to me, then I'm just going to drift off. But if your idea is cool, is interesting, is fascinating, is clever, if I'm jealous I didn't come up with that idea.
So what's a cool idea?
You know what? The best stretch of these seems to be like in the 80s. You look at a lot of the movies that were hits in the 80s, Big, Ghostbusters, Home Alone, Back to the Future, The Hangover more recently, movies where the main concept is just so splash, intriguing, something that's so intriguing when you first hear about it that it suggests all kinds of set pieces and tensions and possibilities, and it just sounds cool and interesting.
And so a current movie that would qualify would be, now that you're on the spot, we can't think.
Yeah, it's trickier nowadays because, again, so much of what seems to make it to the big screen is, the industry term for it is IP, but we know it as intellectual property, which is ideas that come from another medium, not movies. Or it could be a movie, it could be a remake of a film, but predominantly it's a comic book, it's a book, it could be a podcast, it could be a scandal, true story ripped from the headlines, but it's something that has its origination in another media or another platform.
I just thought of one. I just thought of one. That new Apple show that I haven't seen yet, Severance. That's
Severance. Yeah.
The idea is that there's a guy who they split his personalities and his memories into his work guy and his home guy.
Right. Okay, that's an example right there, which is how do you do a workplace? Is this drama? I assume it's a thriller, thriller.
Yeah,
it has a high concept twist on it.
Right.
So the twist is they're going to bifurcate your brain so that you don't know what's your work personality and your home personality are disconnected from one another. They don't know what's going on. Right. That's how the show works.
Yeah, and well, I think so. I haven't seen it. I've actually fantasized about that because I have a home gym in my garage, and I hate working out. I hate lifting weights. So I always think, what if I could just delete all the memories that I've ever had of being in this gym, and then I wouldn't dread it. And
it's kind of like a Jekyll Hyde kind of thing, right? I don't remember in the original story how much of Hyde's life Jekyll can remember, or vice versa. But yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah. But that is where pretty much aspiring screenwriters stumble right out of the gate. Because frankly, the rest of the script could be brilliant, but if the idea is not interesting enough for me as an executive to solicit it, whether you write me a query letter, run into me at a restaurant or a party, we're talking at a premiere, if you're like, oh, what are you working on? I'm working on this idea about a detective who investigates a missing woman. Okay. It's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, that's half of an idea. What's the other half of the idea that makes it interesting? I
have my own experience with this because I've read a lot of, first of all, I've had decades of experience of writing bad scripts with lame ideas. So I made all the mistakes.
So you're actually an expert on this topic as well.
I'm an expert on failure. And I've also read a lot of other, I don't know what the right word is, emerging or amateur screenwriters' works, because I would...
Aspiring screenwriters.
I would do script swaps, or I would just offer to read things just to be nice. And I learned a lot myself, because also with the log lines, I mean, you can learn what you need to know from the log lines, which is the little capsule summary, as you know, explaining to our audience. like the little 1 or 2 sentence capsule summary.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning some of this lingo if you don't know what a log line is. Log lines are come from something called coverage, and what coverage is a book report on your script that's been written by somebody so that an executive doesn't have to read your screenplay or could later pretend they did read your screenplay by relying on your
That's your daughter calling you?
That is my daughter calling me, as a matter of fact.
Doesn't she know we're on television?
Yeah, I have to let her know that. I will let her know that now. But anyway, yeah, so that to me is the thing you have to learn first and foremost is don't worry. Like, yes, you obviously have to learn how to write a good screenplay, but you need a good idea before you write a good screenplay. If you don't have a good idea and you're a good writer, then you might write something that works as, say, a writing sample, and a writing sample could maybe help you get a job, which is, they have open writing assignments, which is we're looking for a writer to write this adaptation of a new book or this article that we found in the New York Times. We're looking for a writer, and if your writing sample is good, you're good with character, you're good with dialogue, then maybe you can get a writing assignment based on that. But honestly, you want to say
I don't think that would even work now. I think it's so competitive that those writing assignments are going to people who already have careers. And the blacklist, which is 2 things. The blacklist is an annual list of the executives' favorite unproduced screenplays that used to be actual unproduced screenplays, and now what it is, it's a list of people's most popular writing samples. Because
basically,
if it's a Marvel movie, that script is not being circulated. It's kept under a lid.
Yeah, no. The blacklist, as you're mentioning, it originated from an executive that worked for Leonardo DiCaprio's company, and he was looking for a way to basically find out what all the good screenplays are that are out there that he should be reading, and he kind of like crowdsourced it from a bunch of other executives and basically asked them, like, what are the good scripts I should be reading? And over time, he figured out a way to, create a spreadsheet, and they started tabulating like from the most suggested to the least suggested, but it was a database of like really interesting scripts. And nowadays, when I think of a blacklist screenplay, I think of like, Man in the Moon or something, or the quirky biopics seem to be huge on the blacklist.
Well, because that was how you crack the code. If it's somebody famous and you don't know the true story, or if it's like, some guy you've never heard of who did something amazing, then it's a way to get around the what's the idea. So
right, and
now they have a consumer website. Yeah. They have a consumer website where we suckers can pay $100 and have them review our script, and if they give it a very high score, then they tweet about it, but usually they won't. And I think that it's weighted by virtue signaling. I don't think it's accurate. I think that the best scripts that they tweet about have like very virtuous subject matter. That
probably evolved over time. I definitely noticed, and I think it's still true when you look at it, that one of the things that we're all looking for, as we just mentioned, is the intellectual property or something that will speak to you that is already pre-sold as an idea, that it's interesting, you want to read it. And so if you're an aspiring screenwriter, you're obviously not going to be able to write a Superman movie, you're not going to be able to write a Batman movie, but then you're looking for things that are, well, what are subject matters that exist in the world that people have heard of, which is why you see a lot of Santa Claus movies or Dracula movies, or maybe Dracula versus Santa Claus, if you want to write that. But, and that's why a lot of true stories, quirky biopics would be an example, which is, those are things that are out there, and you don't necessarily need the life rights to write about some of those stories, although some you do. But that's just another way to break through and get the attention of people, like what I used to do for 30 years, which is I'm looking for good ideas for movies for my company, and I'm looking for them wherever I can get them. And yes, it would be nice if I could find a completed screenplay that's already sort of taken that idea and turns it into a complete project. But a lot of the time I had to, pound the, pavement and search through the weeds for, you know, what's an interesting, you know, podcast, or what's an interesting article, or what's an interesting historical event that has not yet been turned into a movie. And, you know, it's a grab bag. But there used to be, as you can attest to, Lucas, there used to be a big spec script marketplace in like the late 80s and early 90s, much bigger than it is right now, where things would sell for $1 million, like seemingly every other week. It doesn't exist like that anymore. It's harder to sell what I would call a naked script that doesn't have attachments, doesn't have like an actor, director, doesn't have some element attached to it to help it break above just the white noise. But if you have a great idea, that's at least you're starting with something that is going to immediately compel people.
Here's one of my observations. First of all, I have had the experience, and I did this intentionally, of reading hundreds of log lines so that I could see what it's like to be a manager or an executive or a producer, because you'll be wishing for death. I mean, it's unbearable, especially if you look at the Blacklist website, or if you look at the actual Blacklist, or if you look at contest results. You can go to a website called Coverfly and they aggregate the contest results. You can look at hundreds of these scripts. What I noticed about the aspiring screenwriter scripts is that they had the same problem of it having no idea and way too many of them.
Yeah.
It would be like, you know, a man tries to rescue his daughter who's a drug addict from vampires, and there's an alien, and then there's a kidnapping. So it's like five.
Actually, that's way more high concept than I would think you'd find, because most of the time when I see them, they're not even that. It's like, you know, a nerd tries to open a store while simultaneously coming of age in a small Kentucky town, or like something.
But that
like
could be genius. Like, see, this is what sucks. There is such a thing as like the voice script, and a script that if you read the log line, it's boring. But if you actually read this, it could be a brilliant script with a brilliant voice. You'll never know, because nobody's going to spend the time to read 1,000 scripts to find the two that have the great voice.
Yeah,
right?
No, that's true. That's true.
Because most of the time, here's another theory I've had. So I'm really doing this show to talk about my theories and see if anybody agrees.
Okay.
So I've met really interesting people who are then great writers. I've met really interesting people who then the writing wasn't good. I don't think I've ever met somebody who seemed really dull and then the writing was great. Maybe they'd be shy or quiet, but they really, then when they do open their mouth, it's like really interesting stuff. I've never met someone who just seemed lame and then the writing was great.
Right. Yeah, you can almost never tell what the personality of a writer is going to be based on their material. It's fascinating. Like, you know, it could be the most raucous, funny, a comedy in the world, like over the top, hard R, and it's like the most sweet, quiet, nice guy or girl when you meet them, and it's like, huh, that's so crazy. It's similar to when I don't know how many actors like you've met where there's the persona they have, but that's not who they are. They're just a good actor. And I can't tell you how many times over the years I've met character actors. You just assume that they're going to be the person that's in movies and television. In real life, they're not that at all. So it's like, oh, you're a really good actor, because like I thought, you know, you were Kevin from The Office, but you're not in real life at all. That you're just that good when you're on screen. It's kind of cool.
How many writers would you say you met in your time at Bruckheimer?
Oh God, I could not even, you know, in the thousands. Has to be over 30 years.
And like, how many of them? What was it like for you? I mean, it's like dating, where it's like, God, I hope this is a great first date. But most of the time, someone's sort of probably pleasant and innocuous, and the writing's okay, and you're looking for somebody who you really like and who's really dazzling, and the writing's great. And how did that happen?
It was, you know, the thing is, what success happens slowly and then all at once, right? Which is, you know, you write for years, you write many screenplays. Like I think a lot of newcomer writers aren't aware of like how long it usually takes the average writer to get to the point where they could be professionally considered.
How long do you think?
A script or get a writing assignment. It's not like your generally it's not your first screenplay. Yes, sometimes that happens, just like every day somebody wins the lottery, but that's not the norm. The norm is you're writing 5, 7, 10, like you're writing a number of scripts before you get to the point where you have something that's good enough that an industry professional can read it and go, this person understands the form, this person knows how to write a story. It's a learning curve like anything else, right? And then you're talking about, I want to sell a piece of material, 110 pages of material that some studio is going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on and tens of millions of dollars to produce. That's a high bar. That really is a high bar. So yeah, you have to have put in the 10,000 hours or whatever it is, do your time to learn the form. Now, yes, there are some people who are just great right out of the box. It's very, very, very rare. As you mentioned, I have a script consulting business, and it's for aspiring screenwriters mostly, although I deal with some professionals as well and intermediate writers. And the other day, I read an aspiring writer. It's like basically their first script ever, who the only people who had read it were, girlfriend and family member, the only people that have read it. And within a couple pages, it was very evident this person had talent. This person knew how to write dialogue and character. It was comedy. It was very funny. And, it read like a professional screenplay. But this is a newcomer. It's super. What's that?
I bet it was a woman.
It was actually a man.
Oh, okay, I'm wrong.
It was actually a man. And like, it was one of those things where like, I was so pleased, like, holy cow, this guy can write.
Is it saleable?
So, it's one of those things where it's in the idea, the writing is stronger than the idea. The idea is good, but it's not the kind of idea that when you immediately hear it, you would go and do cartwheels. It's kind of like, okay, you need a little bit more, but the execution, the quality of the writing, just the quality of, every aspect of it, from character to dialogue to set pieces, the readability of it was all just like of a caliber that you're not expecting from, an aspiring, let alone a first draft.
Was it somebody who came from,
a first script?
Was it somebody who came from a creative field?
It's somebody who came from like the opposite of creative field.
That's great.
Somebody who came from like mathematics or something completely different. But it like that's cool when you do that. But that's rare. That's what I'm saying, is that it is rare, but it happens. If you're a normal person who wants to be a screenwriter, it will probably take you more than one script, and it'll probably take you more than 3 scripts. It'll probably take you some time because you're learning a completely different form. You probably are a movie fan, but you probably haven't done what you and I have done over the years, which is like dismantle and deconstruct the things that we love to see how they are put together so that you can emulate that and start to figure that out.
I hate this person.
What's
I'm joking.
No, it's thrilling when you see it. It's just so rare. That's the reason why you're thrilled.
Well, it's like, I'm always interested in how to crack the code, and I mean, I'm so, I feel like I'm coming off as arrogant, but also like I'm so stupid because I've been trying to do this for 15 years maybe, and not always full time, but I just had a hard time executing ideas or making sure the ideas are strong enough. I like my material now.
Can I ask you? Do you work with partners? Do you mostly write solo? And do you have sort of a sounding board when you're coming up with your ideas for, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Or are you doing it all just yourself?
I'm mostly doing it myself. I have written in the past. I have a very good friend whose name is Robert Nathan, and he was a showrunner for Dick Wolf. And so he's a bit older than me. And I met him because we went to the same college, and I saw Law and Orders. And I saw the really good early ones with Michael Moriarty, and his name was all over them. And I knew he had gone to Amherst. So I cold called him out of the alumni directory, and we became friends. And I had written some things, and they had ideas that he liked. So we wrote a couple of things together, and we actually made one as a super cheap indie called Lucky Bastard that is one of the only movies in existence rated NC-17, because it's a found footage movie about murders on a porn set. And it was a really
light comedy. Okay.
Yeah, light comedy, family film. So we're proud of the movie. It really didn't get seen. But then after that, I had originated a sci-fi pilot that is the same idea as Free Guy. So, and we did it exactly the same time as Free Guy. It was just total independent creation. And he liked the idea, but it was a big mess. And then he came, then we rewrote it together, and we actually got an option for a good chunk of money. And I got representation off of that. But I was not able to write solo to a professional enough standard. And my friend has had, it's not that we don't want to work together anymore, but he's had some just different life pursuits, and he was not been available. So I've been on my own. And my kids, I have twin girls who were born in 2014. And so we've just been out in South Pasadena in the very quiet suburban life. So no, I have nobody in my network, and I have to just do this myself and then pay for script consultants to read things or do script swaps. And it's been a very arduous, painful process. But now I finally.
But you know what? The story you just told, Lucas, though, is incredibly educational. I hope people were paying attention to it. What you did was you used a combination of like moxie and serendipity to find out you went to college with somebody who was professionally affiliated. You kind of threw a Hail Mary to try to contact them. You did. You developed a friendship. The friendship developed into a writing relationship. The writing relationship led to writing a screenplay that got you representation and money. That's all because of a combination of like luck and serendipity and moxie, and a lot of how, because whenever anybody's asking, how do you break in? As if there's one way to break in. There is no one way to break into this business. There's a million ways to break into the business. You've got to find out your way there. And you won't know in advance what that is going to be. Well, it could be any one of these things.
I thank you for your nice words, and I agree with you. But it's another one of my crackpot theories that aspiring writers put the wrong emphasis on getting read. And they don't put enough emphasis on getting the material up to a pro caliber. And mostly it's because nobody really knows how to do that. Now, there's a whole universe now of script consultants, and present company accepted. I don't think they serve writers well, because so many of them are for-profit businesses that are, it's a snake eating its own tail. It's two problems. So first problem is that they're in there to make money. So they instruct people to be just the right amount of encouraging so that people keep coming back.
The screenwriting, consulting, and coverage complex, one of the reasons I decided to do what I have done is because I have either personally met people who kind of claim to be script consultants who really shouldn't be doing it because they don't have the credentials, experience, skills, pedigree to do it. But there are so many of them. And originally I had gotten onto some of these Facebook screenwriting boards, started to see people who were sort of like, hey, I'll read your screenplay, I'll give you notes, I'll do this, and going on their websites and like, who are these people? Like, who are these people? Where are they coming from? Why are they feeling it's justified to charge people hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for their services? Who the F are they? Yeah. And 99 times out of 100, they're nobody. Like, they're literally
it is. And that's what I was going to say, is that these coverage companies hire aspiring writers to write the coverage. So it's really the blind leading the blind. And I've been on the receiving end of a lot of coverage where so the past few years, like I would finish a draft and then a week later I'd go, you know, like I made it about the wrong protagonist. And
Mm.
then the coverage would still come back and they would, but nobody would say you made it about the wrong protagonist. They would just, you know, they were in the weeds of trying to give me encouraging advice. So
Right.
they don't really get into what's actionable and how the real pros see it. They don't really get into clarity. They don't really understand. They just don't understand the humanity that makes these things work.
Well, they're not again, they're not doing it at a professional level because
Yeah.
that's not what they're
Well,
doing.
and also I think, and nobody wants to say like you're lame and your ideas suck. It's always like,
Right.
what a precious little baby, and here's how you can put a new, you know,
Right.
bottom on it.
Right. Well, I mean, again, I think bedside manner. Look, I'm not anybody's cheapest option for script consulting because I have limited time. My experience is at a certain level. So when I'm working with people, I am, you know, I have a select clientele because I'm only one person and I'm not farming it out to anybody. I'm doing it myself. And not only that, but I'm doing it the way I was doing it when I was working with the most professional writers in the business. The A-level writers who are writing big franchises, there's a certain process in terms of how we develop an idea to a full completed screenplay. So I'm trying to give that experience to people, but there's an attitude thing too, right? Which is you don't have to be a jerk about it. And some people are jerks. So it's like, I'm trying to be encouraging, but in a rational, grounded, down to earth way. And I think that's important because what you don't want to do is you don't want to like, you know, chop somebody off at the knees, especially when they're aspiring and they're just starting out
Yeah,
and they kind of need information.
I agree, and you know, I'm too blunt, and but yeah, we're all trying. I mean, my heart goes out to people, and I hope I would never give somebody direct feedback like that. The problem to me is like, how do you give someone feedback that tells the truth while, I mean, look, I have a very thick skin, and I always want to just hear the unvarnished truth because I decided a long time ago that in such a competitive marketplace, I would have an advantage if I had no sensitivity to criticism. Because
Right.
all these other people would have sensitivity, and that means they wouldn't internalize and accept the criticism and filter it and figure out what really needed to be done. So I decided if I just had no emotion whatsoever about the feedback, then I could actually use it. And now I do occasionally. The only thing that really pisses me off is when the feedback is just so amateurish and ridiculously stupid that like, why did I waste my time or money with these people?
Right. Right. And you're bringing up that's one of two things, right? It's one is you have to be willing to accept criticism, but two, it's the quality of the criticism, right?
Yes,
You want to make sure that like, okay, listen, I'm gonna be open to any notes that somebody has, but if the notes are coming from, like I said, in the world of script consultants, the vast majority of them are not people that have worked in a professional enough capacity to help you. So it's incumbent upon the person looking for the service to do some cursory research to find out, well, okay, can this person be useful to me or helpful to me? Yeah.
I have a point to make, which is something interesting that has happened to me. So during the pandemic, like I realized, so I mentioned I had a manager off that TV show, and when the pandemic hit, I left that manager. He's doing really well. I like him personally, but he wasn't reading my stuff, and we just weren't clicking. And my stuff wasn't good enough, so I pulled back and I just rewrote everything. And I have scripts now that are good, and people say, "Hey, that's really good," and I say, "Yeah, that's the sixth draft of the sixth completely different version of it," which is why it's
Yeah.
good. But what I've discovered now is that as I submit some of these things, what I'm getting back are like movie reviews. So it's no longer like this character doesn't make sense and this is dangling and there's a logic problem here. It's not real notes. It's like you made an orange and I don't understand it and I wish you had made an apple.
Well, that's another thing, which is somebody could give you notes not on the thing you've written, but on the thing they'd like to see instead, which is not always necessarily helpful. You know, like if you're trying to write something, you know, one of the things I would ask is, well, what are you trying to achieve? Because before we talk about it, I want to know like what is it? What is your goal here? What are the comps? Like, what are the kind of things that you would liken this to? You know, because that's one of the things if you're sending out a piece of material and it's like, Jesus Christ, this is like a David Lynch thing. Like, this is not a, you know, a studio movie. This is like so weird. If it's not that, virtually anything else you're going to write, there are precedents for it. There are models for it. There are things that are in a similar vein. And so I would ask you, like, well, what are you going for here? Like, what are some movies that you can liken this to? Because then at least we can have a common language to talk about what it is you're trying to achieve with the material.
Well, let me tell you something that's happened to me. And I'm sure you've had this experience where the biggest problem that I have in giving notes is that I do have a particular taste, and I have some things that I just don't get. You know, I don't get broad comedies, things that are hugely popular. I'm not the guy for fart joke movies. I'm not the guy for exploding head, like how many creative ways can we blow up people? But sometimes I have read, so let's say I've read 100 of these aspiring scripts, and 90 of them are just, you can discount them because they're just not, they don't have a good idea, and they're just not there. You know, there's too much, there are too many cliches. The human behavior is not realistic. They're just, they don't grab you. They're not interesting. They're just dumb. And, you know, I don't, that's just the truth. And then maybe if there were 10 in there, like 2 or 3 of them would have really awesome ideas. And I would say, dude, that is a killer idea. And I don't want to repeat them to you on the air, but I could. You would say, oh, that's a good idea. But the script was not written right, like not even close.
Right.
And I would have, and
well,
then,
they're not exploiting their idea.
Well, but and then other, yes, so they're not exploiting their idea. And then there would be another one where there would be people sort of at that like you know, the quadruple A level, like in baseball, where they're too good for triple A, but they're not quite the pros.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be like a really good script with very flashy writing and a pretty good idea, but it would have something structurally wrong, where I would say the premise of this movie, if it's a science fiction thing about death, the premise of the movie has to do with loss, and what your character is instead, it's too busy. The character already has something, so you need the character to start in a place of loss as opposed to being afraid of the loss. I mean, right. That's gobbledygook, but I think you understand because you're.
No, but it's streamlining the story, or right. Streamlining the idea to properly exploit whatever the idea
my
is.
My point is that I have, what I did to my own work the last 2 years is streamlining the, I get so excited I can't talk, which happened when I was directing, and the actor's like, what'd you say? And
streamlining, yes.
Streamlining the idea so that it was simple. And I remember I used to hang out with our mutual pal, Shane Black. And I remember I would drive him to his office when he was working on Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And it was already written. And I would drop him off. I say, Shane, what do you do? I mean, it's already written. And he'd go, I'm just trying to simplify it. I'm like, but your stuff is like famously complicated. And I guess that's why he was trying to simplify it. But, and this is like one of the top screenwriters of all time. And he was still chiseling to make things more streamlined, and he wouldn't stop.
Right.
So what I noticed with some of these guys is that I would say, you know, it's not that, well, I would say the stretch from page 50 to 60 and the stretch from page 80 to 90, it looks like different things because one's a fight in a parking lot, one's a fight in a building, but narratively they're repetitive because one is the goal is to rescue the kid, and then the other one's the goal to rescue the mom. And it's like, you know, it doesn't feel right. And the problem isn't, the real problem has to do with the fact that the character wants the wrong things, or they want the same thing twice. So, right. And that's like a big note because I think it was the right note, but I've always had the experience of these guys going, well, thanks, that's interesting, I'll think about it. And then I never hear from them again.
Right, right. Well,
they don't want to pull it apart, because when I was doing my own stuff, I was like, God, I think I wrote it wrong. And this is a page 1 rewrite. And then I would, because there's a pandemic, because I'm determined to succeed, I would say, I'm going to do it. And I would just start over page 1 rewrite. It always made it better. Always.
Well, let me ask you, like, how, when it comes to when you're writing something, do you outline loosely before you start writing screenplay pages?
Of course.
Or do you, well, I guess it's a spectrum, right? Like,
it's multiple choice. Sorry.
Like in other words, like when I write, I actually don't work from a very detailed outline, but I have every scene. So it's like, you know, the 40 to 60 scenes. And, you know, if you're a new coming writer, about 40 to 60 scenes is roughly the amount of scenes in an average script. If I don't have at least 40, or if I have more than 60, I immediately know something is wrong. Something is going to be too long and convoluted. Something is going to be too simple, and it's not going to like make its way to feature length. But I have that number of beats, right? And then you're also breaking it up by act, right? So you know that like there's an act 1, there's an act 2, there's an act 3. Act 2 is basically 2, you know, 25 to 30 page segments. So you're trying to like sketch out during the outlining process, what are all the beats or the scenes that are going to be in there? And you're going to work from that. Some people write, you know, 40-page treatment that is far more detailed with all dialogue, and some people call it a scriptment. James Cameron used to call them scriptments. I don't do that, but some people do.
I have done
that's fine.
I've done different, to answer your question, thank you for asking. I've done different versions of these. I've always tried to outline, but what I find is that it's a very fluid process where in the process of every time you take a pass on it, I learn more. And I learn because I build these things from the inside out, and that's not baloney. It's really the truth. So you build it from the inside out of a character's journey and what they want, and how that relates, how that's drawn from the concept, and then how that's surrounded by the obstacles. And so it's this kind of floating math problem where you sort of know the set pieces, and you know the ending, and you know the desire, and you know the antagonist, but it really, I always find in the, like, as much as I try to outline it, when I'm actually writing the scenes, until those characters open their mouths, the scene isn't really what I thought it was about. And I discover that the outline that I thought was cool is in fact very repetitive because I didn't get deeper into that character, because what you're really trying to do is have everything be relatable to human behavior and have it feel truthful and have it feel real. And
so when you're doing that, when you're outlining, you find that you outline at such a degree of detail that you're still finding a lot more discovery when you're writing script pages, and that might actually cause you to realize, oh, I didn't figure out enough of this kind of behavioral stuff in the outline, and now that I'm writing pages, this is going to fuck with my excuse me, this is going to screw up my outline a lot more than I thought. And then you wind up changing a lot of major parts in the script writing of the idea.
Yes, I think so. But also even more than that, what I've done the past 2 years is that I've had the same 6 or 7 projects that I've rewritten over and over. And I know that's a huge red flag usually to people like you, because if you're just writing your same stupid idea over and over, it's never going to be good. But I actually did have some pretty cool concepts. And it was a matter of getting deeper into that concept to try and find the moments, but to try and find, I found that until the characters were doing the scene work, and Mike Nichols, you know, it's every scene's either a negotiation or a seduction or a fight, because otherwise it's just wallpaper. So when it's, what is this person trying to get? And then I go, it would be so much more interesting if that person doesn't already know this and we have her discover it in the scene. Or
right.
I would figure out, it's always a balancing act of having the movie happen in the present. And sometimes you realize I don't need to show that. And then sometimes you realize I do need to show that. And I also found that one of the mistakes I was making as an amateur was in overcomplicating the backstory and the setup. And then, as much as people say try and get in as late as possible, I was actually getting in way too late because there was so much history, and then the scenes just became exposition, which is the kiss of death.
Well, that's a problem. I would say that you know, having a screenplay where there's so much backstory that maybe you as the writer think, oh, I understand this, but you forget your audience doesn't when they're reading the material, and that becomes a thing when somebody's reading it going like, I don't understand. There's so much off the page that I need to sort of intuit about what's happening here. And then it becomes a question of clarity. a lot of
Yeah,
notes.
I've had enormous clarity problems, and I've worked as hard as I can to resolve them, and I'm still not there. But
that is a huge aspiring screenwriter challenge. Is that I noticed that a lot of questions I have when I read the scripts are about clarity. I'm asking a lot of questions about every individual scene, motivations, what's the logic, how to, those kind of things are a lot of the notes.
Right, because people write, and it comes back to their concept or lack of concept, because they've done a remove on a remove.
Yeah.
So they haven't just made a movie about vampires, but they've made a movie about Dr. Vampires.
Yeah, we used to call that a hat on a hat, which
Yes.
is the idea of the movie starts out with a guy who's basically walking through the woods one night, and suddenly there's a light in the sky, and it's a flying saucer, and the guy is suddenly beamed aboard the flying saucer, and the guy is strapped down to a bed, and the aliens are coming over, and suddenly the guy turns into a werewolf. That doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, the guy abducted by the aliens, that's fine. If he's a werewolf on top of that, you're starting to ask.
Well, and it's also that is like a teaser that I would used to write. But then I learned nobody cares what happens to that guy if he doesn't want something that we relate to.
Right.
So that's another thing that I think people do wrong. They start things too slow and they start things too fast. And I have read so many of these scripts where I'm at page 15 and I still don't know who the protagonist is.
Oh, sure. That's another problem, is that, it's a cliche to basically say, you can tell in 5 or 10 pages if somebody knows how to write a screenplay, except it's absolutely true. Because you can tell within 5 or 10 pages. It's like, okay, this is clearly the protagonist. It's a comedy because it's funny on the first page. You can tell by page 10 what the premise of the movie is going to be. Like, all those things, look at any good movie or any movie that you like. Those things are set up in the first 10 pages for a reason. And if you're not doing that, then either you're such a skilled artisan, like, Christopher Nolan or something like that you're doing something completely different. You're screwing with the formatting of the form or something like that, like Memento or Dunkirk, or you don't know what you're doing. And that's more likely the case if you're an aspiring screenwriter. You're not probably writing Pulp Fiction and playing with structure. It's more likely like you're just kind of spinning wheels until you figure out what you're going to do. But I guess the reason I was asking about your outlining process is, to some degree, yes, I agree that you need to be able to have discovery when you get to the screenwriting. But I wonder if you're outlining in a way that makes sense, are you gonna figure out a lot of those roadblocks in the outlining process that saves you time? Because one of the reasons why people have to write 20 drafts of a screenplay is because maybe when it came to outlining before you started writing script pages, you didn't walk through the story enough, walk through the character motivations enough, so that by the time that you sat down to write the pages, you already knew, you were already intellectually or abstractly walked through the scene by scene construction of your story and said, no, that doesn't make sense. Why is he going here? Kind of predetermining those issues before you sit down to write the screenplay, so that your first draft is anybody else's fourth draft. Or
yeah, I mean, I've wanted to get to that point with the craft, and it's still a struggle.
Tricky, right?
But it is for everybody, and I think that I'm not afraid to throw something out when I discover something better. I think most of the scripts that I read, it's just they didn't really have much to say about people, and it starts from that, and it starts from little moments and human moments, and I'm sort of spacing out, but look, it's hard to say, but I mean, this is stuff that my friend Robert used to always say, like, what do you want? I mean, because you've written a script with nobody wants anything. It's like, look what you want. You want to make money, and you want people to respect you, and you want your family to think that your life hasn't been a joke and that you haven't squandered your potential. It's like, oh yeah, I can connect to that. So it's like, how do you go deep into your own fears and your own vulnerabilities to put that on the page and make it meaningful. And I don't think any of those, I don't know if you do, I'm sure you do it a lot better, but I don't think any of those screenwriting courses are prepared to really talk about the truth of human emotions, because no one wants to tell people that their ideas about humanity are wrong or dumb, even if they are, or
well, yeah, here's the thing, right? There's no right way to come up with a movie idea, right? I mean, some people, I usually come from the general to the specific. I come up with what's the big idea, and then work from whatever the big idea is, which is general, very general, to the specific. And so how could what's an example of this? I'll throw this out. I've always had this one-liner for a kidnapping thriller, right? And the kidnapping thriller was pretty simple. It was the guy's kid is kidnapped. The guy is dealing with the kidnapper. The kidnapper is basically, ransoming the child of our hero. And somehow the hero finds out where the kidnapper lives and kidnaps that guy's wife or that guy's child. So that when the kidnapper now calls our hero and says, "Do you have the money?" "No, but I have something better."
Is that like Prisoners?
Prisoners is similar. Yes, this is before Prisoners.
That's a great movie. That's a great idea, Charlie. They made
right. So this will happen to a lot of screenwriters out there, but like that was the basic, and that's a good example. That's the basic idea, right? That's a one-liner. Mm-hmm. I don't know who the guy is. I don't know about the kid. I don't know how he finds the guy who kidnapped his child. I don't know any of that stuff. But if I had that big idea, I can build it from there. But now some people start with a character. Some people start with, like a springboard, like a little event, and then they work out from that. There's no, and again, some people start from, a video game or a board game or something like that. But once I have the big idea, and again, this is because I worked for, Jerry Bruckheimer for 30 years. It's like, you need a big, compelling idea. Then you build out from that seed. You have to have a good seed. You're not going to have a good tree if you don't have a good seed, but you build out from that. And so that's the hard thing to find, I think, if you're a writer, which is discerning what are the good ideas, because ideas are a dime a dozen. That is true. Good ideas are worth their weight in gold. So the first time that I read the idea for what Home Alone was in the trades was like, I remember it very vividly. It was a revelatory moment. And I was just like, what a good idea for a comedy. Wasn't a good idea for.
And wasn't that put in turnaround? Isn't there a story?
Oh yeah, it was put in turnaround from, I think it was Fox to Warner Brothers, or the other way around.
That's I can't believe, like E.T. was put in turnaround. Like, what are people? How do people have jobs? It's crazy.
Well, I mean, you learn to cover your butt, but that's an example to me of like, okay, so I'm starting out from a great idea, but what you're saying is every story is about a character whose normal life is upended by an unusual situation. And that's one part of the story, which is, how does an average person's status quo get changed by the events of the movie? Why are we watching this particular story? What happened? Something changed in the status quo of this person's world. Then, if it's a really good movie, it's how does this person's Achilles heel get addressed by the events of the movie? Whatever that Achilles heel is. Right. I want to find love. I want to find courage. I want to get, I want to find my child. Whatever they're missing. Have you solved by the movie?
Have you read the why am I spacing on that? The Craig Mazin script
Craig
note?
Mazin.
Yeah. Have you read his podcast transcript about how Pixar made Finding Nemo? And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's the keys to the kingdom about how you come up with an idea for a movie and how you build from the concept, the theme, and the protagonist, and the anti-theme, he calls it. It's the roadmap for all this stuff.
Yeah, and that is the thing, which is a lot of times, even if you find a great movie idea, you still have to find those elements of it. Otherwise, it's just going to be one-dimensional, or it's going to be superficial. To be a really great movie, you want it to not just be a guy who goes on an adventure and the adventure is interesting. because that could be Batman, Superman, James Bond, Tarzan, Sherlock Holmes. The story itself is interesting, but the character himself doesn't experience much growth by the end of it. That's like a series character generally. But if it's a great movie, then it's like, not only do I have to solve that problem, Marty McFly and Back to the Future, one of the all-time greats, screenplay and movie, right? I accidentally got thrown into the 1950s and I accidentally screwed up my parents' meeting. So now I have two problems I got to solve. I got to find a way to get back to 1985 from 1955. But that won't matter if I don't get my parents together, because if they don't get together, I'm never going to be born. So there's two kind of concurrent problems. And as a result, from the beginning of the movie, he's a kid who lacks confidence, right? What's the Achilles heel of Marty McFly? I lack confidence. I don't know if I'm going to ever get a chance to play in front of anybody. I don't know if I'm a good enough musician. I want to be a rock star. And he's got to overcome that confidence. So the events of the movie allow him to solve that problem by playing for the prom that brings his parents together. What an elegant solution. What a cool way to sort of pay off both stories, right? The guy doesn't even get picked for the school, talent show. And he gets to be not only a rock star who invents rock and roll, but the moment helps him bring his parents together, allowing him to be born. That is really cool. But by the way, when Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale wrote that screenplay, they rewrote it many times to get it to that clockwork genius that we love right now. That was not all in the original script.
I live down the street from the 1955 houses.
Wow.
Yeah, Marty, the Fly house and Biff's house and Lorraine's house are on the street down that way.
Very cool.
Yeah, South Pasadena's. It's got Michael Myers' house. It's got Pee Wee's house. They film stuff all the time.
Yeah, but that's what we're talking about, right? Which is, while Back to the Future has a big concept, very big concept, and by the way, passed on by everybody. Right? You remember, Disney was just like, huh? A guy who goes back in time and his mother falls in love with him? That's too incestuous. That's too weird. And everybody passed on it originally. And it wasn't until Bob Zemeckis had a number of hit movies under his belt as a director that they came back to the screenplay. But it's a very human story. Everybody can understand and sympathize with that character. And the best movies kind of wed a great, cool, high concept idea to a great character journey. If your character is cool throughout, from beginning to end, that's just not very interesting. Then it's a static character. And that's,
I know, it's funny. It's the smallest little adjustments make things work. I remember reading about or watching a documentary about Galaxy Quest. And in the original...
By the way, if you haven't seen it, to all of our friends out there, many of whom have never seen Galaxy Quest.
Oh my God, it's genius.
Go watch Galaxy Quest after you listen to or watch this podcast, because it's everything that we're talking about. It's super high concept. It's got great character arcs, funny as hell, great setups and payoffs. It is a very unsung masterclass in writing a great screenplay.
The story about the original spec script had the captain, the Tim Allen character, hate that he was the captain.
Captain Starshine or whatever it was called. Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy who rewrote it said, no, I think he loved being the captain. If he could be the captain for one more day, he would do it. And that's the movie. That's Shatner, because that's Shatner. That is Shatner in real life.
That was brilliant. Yeah, it's a great documentary, and it is that one element that you find and you just adjust, and it also gives it its poignancy, right? I mean, in Galaxy Quest, the reason that the movie works so great is in this what seems to be silly comedy is great poignancy and emotion. There's 2 or 3 moments in that movie that always choke me up, that are so well done, even though it's this kind of crazy idea, this silly idea. By the way, Galaxy Quest is a type of film. It's the same movie as Three Amigos. It's the same movie as Bug's Life, right? All of these movies are the same underlying structure, which is people pretending to be something, get mistaken for that something in the real world, and now have to do that job for real, whatever it is. In Bug's Life, it's being circus performers, but they're mistaken for something else. In Three Amigos, they're actors that are mistaken for, you know, heroes, cowboys. And in Galaxy Quest, it's people playing Star Trek characters who are mistaken for being real heroes by an alien race. It's a resilient paradigm. And Galaxy, and by the way, all those movies are great.
Yeah.
Every one of the movies we just mentioned are really fun movies. But Galaxy Quest in particular is extraordinarily well done.
So let me ask you something. So when you were at Bruckheimer and you guys were in development on tons and tons of stuff, and a lot of them became famous movies, and we've all heard about like they would fire the writer and get a new writer. I mean, what would happen where you would just reach like, did someone discover this needs to be a comedy, not a drama, and we'll just get someone else? Like, when would you turn it over like that?
A lot of time it was really, the big idea never changes. Like you were just discussing, you have a big idea, but you might rewrite the idea, and the big idea never changes, but how you execute it does, right? So the same thing would work in development. We'd be working with a writer on that idea that we love so much. Sometimes they're the first writer. Sometimes they're just a writer that we hire to adapt, you know, an existing piece of material, whether it's a book or, you know, comic book or, you know, a remake of a movie, whatever it is. And we work with that writer because, you know, we read their writing samples, we love their writing, and they give us something that is 65% of the way there or 70% of the way there. And we work with that writer until such time that it seems like it runs out of gas. This particular kind of alchemy between like what we're working with a writer and the ideas they're coming up with and our ability to work with them. We reach a certain point where it's clear like, all right, well, we've driven this car as much as we can at this point, and then we move on to another writer. So you go back looking at reading a bunch of writing samples, trying to find somebody who, okay, so now maybe we need more character work, or we need more structural work, or we need like whatever the thing is that's still missing from the script. We're going to now go and look for a writer who is particularly strong in that area.
Would you say to the first guy, look, we need to bump up the character work, and they go, okay, but then it wouldn't come out how you want it?
Yeah, we do it. We do it. We work with those writers and we try to fix those issues as best we can. And then we get to a point where it's clear that like we both agree, okay, we've done what we can do at this point. Mm-hmm. And then we move on to another writer, and that process could last 7 writers, 8 writers, 10 writers long.
And how many of those scripts would be churning or working in development at any time?
The totality of the number of projects that we're working on at any given time would be 2 to 3 dozen, 25 to 35 different projects. And
how many would become movies?
Third, maybe a little less, probably.
And it would be determined what determined which ones became a movie?
The ones that we were happy enough with, that we got to the studio that we were working with, where they agreed it had reached a certain point where they can see, yeah, we're happy with this, let's go try to find a director. Like, you know, it would have to reach a certain level of development where they can see the promise and start opening the spigot to start making offers to directors. Because that's how you build the movie. Sometimes it would be a star, but most of the time it would be a director. And
how competitive is that marketplace, or was it even 10?
Oh, it's super competitive. I mean, the thing is, you know, it doesn't matter if you're Spielberg, or maybe it matters if you're Spielberg, but if you're a filmmaker, like everybody's going for the same talent, right? Everybody's going for the same directors, everybody's going for the same actors, and there's a limited pool of those people. So they get to pick and choose their projects. So, you know, are we going to get Steven Spielberg to direct one of our movies? Highly unlikely. It's possible, you know, and we might submit it to his people, but like it's hard. So you go to the best people that you can go to, or best meaning the ones that you think would be best suited for the project. Obviously that's a very flexible term, best, but the one you think, you know, you think would be really good for the project. And then you start working your way down, you know, whether it's the directors, whether it's the actors, because you almost never get your first choice. Almost never happens, you know, for a variety of reasons. They don't respond to the material, they're available, but not until 2026. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why. So like you're never going to make the movie with the cast you want, and this is an old, parlor game, right? When you go, the original cast choices for Superman, Sylvester Stallone was a choice. Yeah, he was, because he did Rocky at the time. It was the
they were shooting Donner's dentist and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's like you find out so many interesting things about people who were originally gone out to for roles. Every movie I think we ever made, maybe not every movie, most, we're not the first people we wanted to.
I think Frank Sinatra was going to be Dirty Harry at one point.
Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
That might very well be true.
But it's very frustrating now. Part of it's COVID, because there was everything shut down, and now there's a glut of stuff that people are trying to make. So all the talent pool is being gobbled up. Nobody can get anything pushed forward. But financiers don't even want to look at a naked script. They just want the package. And you can't make a package without the financier to
it's a catch 22, right? I mean, basically trying to get talent interested so the financiers will be interested, but then talent isn't interested unless it's funded. It's kind of an actor wants to know, they're like, are you coming to me with a script with an offer to star? No, I'm not doing that. I just want you to read it. If you like it, then we'll go to Netflix. It's like, oh, okay, well, put it on that pile over there. You see that pile of 14 scripts? Those are all funded. So I'm going to read all those. And then if I get time, some point down the road, I might read your screenplay. And it's like, well, if I don't know that person directly or know somebody who knows that person, it's going to take forever.
One of the reasons I wanted to do this, and maybe other things like this, is to raise my profile so that I can meet people who might give me a shot, because I'd like to be a director too. I made that little spaceship short film, and I'd like to make a feature of that. And people, I think, are scared off by the visual effects. And but it's just everybody's got their own stuff they're trying to make. And if they are going to look at somebody else's, it better be the coolest idea ever with the best script ever.
Well, that is the trick. I recently wrote a TV pilot. I'd never written a TV pilot before. And the thing is, right now it's a naked TV pilot, right? I need to find some elements attached to it. And that's hard, because everybody, like you just mentioned, the kind of people that are going to move your material and a name that's going to mean something to Netflix or Apple or Amazon or anybody is somebody who already has enough pedigree and name value recognition that they're already developing their own material.
Yeah.
Why are they going to be interested in yours, right? That's tricky. Luckily, one of the people that I'm acquainted with happens to be a producer with big credits with a current hit TV show on the air. So luckily, I was able to get the material to that person, talking to that person. Again, I'm only doing what I can do. Everybody's only doing what they can do. They're trying to get it out to everybody that they think might give it a read. And it doesn't matter if I know people around town. What's going to matter is, A, are they going to get around to reading my material? B, if they do read it, are they going to respond to it? Those are big questions. But if you don't try, it will never happen. Nobody's going to come knock on my door today and say, hey, we're looking for great movie scripts and TV pilots. You have anything? As a matter, hold on one second. I think I do have. That does not happen in the real world, right? But as you pointed out, there's 500-600 scripted shows now. There's never been more scripted shows, which means they need writing staffs on every one of those shows. The number of shows is expanded, which means that the opportunities have also expanded. But there's a limited talent pool, right? There's always a limited talent pool. So the ones who are the most talented are going to get the biggest offers, the Ryan Murphys or the Shonda Rhimes or the South Park guys got $900 million, a couple of months ago for their Reese Witherspoon sold her personal production company for $900 million. Reese Witherspoon. And, that is amazing. You think of her as an actress, not necessarily as a producer, but she had a production company and she sold it for a lot of money. So, but she's Reese Witherspoon, and the South Park guys are the South Park guys with all those years of experience. Well, so the money's going to go to them, right?
My advice to writers is to be tall and good looking.
Well, actors should be tall and good looking. Writers should be talented, because you could be. I mean, Taylor Sheridan.
I mean, like David Benioff. It's a good looking dude.
Yeah, he is. I've worked with David, and David is definitely a good looking dude. Yeah.
I'm being a little facetious, but I did notice that a lot of these writers who are like the A-list guys, it's because they are good looking, they're tall, and they seem smart, and they seem nice, and they have a good. It's the same thing with film composers, because that's where I came from. I did a magazine about film scores. The most successful film composers are like, they have such good personalities, and you just want to spend time with them.
Well, I think, look, that's true of any creative endeavor, right? Even if you're a talented writer, you also want to be somebody that people like, because you're going to be intimately working with them for months upon months upon. And if you're an a-hole, if you're like a complete jerk, life's too short. Like, you're not going to want to work with that person unless you have no choice, because they are that good. Obviously, there are people who are so talented in whatever their respective fields are that, we have to work with them, because they're that good, but they're monsters. But they're that good. There are very few people that like that. But then there are other people. Like, one of my favorite stories is I was walking through the animation building in Disney one day, long time ago, and it's a long hallway with glass doors at the end of it. And it was me, and there was like an older gentleman who was like a fair distance from me, making their way to the glass doors. And it was one of those things where it's like, he's probably far enough away, he's not going to hold the door open for me, right? It's just, he's far enough away. But he held the door open for me. He actually waited for me to catch up with him. He was holding the door open for me. And as I get close enough to make the door and recognize who it was like, oh my God, it's the Fonz. It's Henry Winkler. Henry Winkler.
He was a nice guy.
He kept, and there was nobody else in the hall at the animation building. And I'm like, that says so much in just that small moment. He doesn't need to keep that door open for me. And he did. That must tell you instantly, no wonder this guy has had such a long career in the business, whether he's an actor or famously a producer, because he's a nice guy that people want to work with. Ron Howard, right? These are nice guys that people want. They're not all like that. I can assure you, they're not all like that. But it's those people would rather work with somebody who's a nice guy.
I totally agree. And that's why I've cultivated my personality as an abrasive dickhead.
I was going to say, that's why you're just so ebullient, and you project such energy and excitement.
But I mean, it's that kind of magic trick of like, oh, he's kind of obnoxious, but not to you.
Yeah, no.
But I'm genuine. I'm a curmudgeon, but I'm authentic in my way. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you can't write or you can't make anything.
Well, and by the way, you'd be like sometimes there are writers, I will say this, over the years, and I won't mention who they are, but they are very good in the room and they don't execute as well. Like, they're better in the room than they are at executing, and you're like, oh, well, no wonder this person keeps getting work, because this person is like able to kind of sell you a good bill of goods, and when it comes right down to it, their writing is like, it's okay, but not nearly as good as the guy that was in the room that sold us on hiring him. That happens sometimes too. It's important to be good in a room, and you could also be terrible in a room, but if your writing is like, oh my God, you'll get work because you're that good. There's a whole spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to be someone who some people like and other people. The problem isn't that they don't like me. It's the problem that I don't like them, because there's some people who are just full of themselves and they're pricks. And it's hard for me to sit there and go along with the kind of Trump-like people who are just full of themselves.
So you don't suffer fools gladly. Yeah.
No, but I mean, maybe I should, but I can't remember. I've put my foot in my mouth enough times, but it doesn't. Whatever. In 100 years, we'll all be dead.
100. You're very optimistic.
that college football coach a few years ago who he had like some huge embarrassing loss, and he was at a press conference. He's talking to the reporters. He goes, about why you did this or that. He goes, 100 years we'll all be dead.
Yeah, again, 100 used to be optimistic. Now, I mean, yeah, but that's why. Look, that's why we have to tell these stories, right? I mean, you look at the headlines right now. COVID in Ukraine. It's so easy to be desperate.
But also, you and I can go like, yeah, look, at least one person likes me.
Yeah,
line from The Departed.
Exactly. It's but honestly, like, think about it. Like, when you've made money from writing, I've made money from writing, and it's like there's something so amazing about being able to go, Jesus, my imagination was strong enough that strangers paid me real money for my stories. There's something so cool about that. There's something so magical about that. One of the reasons we all want to be in writing screenplays, right? It's like we want to share these stories with people, and it's like when somebody's willing to pay you, that's the real, like, when the rubber meets the road. If somebody's willing to actually like pay you money for your imagination, that's pretty cool. That's special.
I have paid more money on my own to finance my imagination as a demo to try and get other people to see what I can do. And man, but
that shows your perseverance and your drive, which again, you are not going to make it in this business if you think you're going to write one screenplay. Yeah, it's just like the world is going to open up for you. God bless you. I hope it happens for you, but it's probably not going to happen for you unless you're the same guy that's going to win the lottery, and maybe you will win the lottery. But like, you got to believe in yourself first and foremost. If you don't, nobody else is going to believe in you. It goes to dating too. That's why confidence sells, right? Mm-hmm. You go around town, it's like, how the hell is that guy? How did he get that girl? Confidence. That's why. That's what it is. Certainly not looks. It's clearly confidence or money. But in our case, it is really about that. It's about, like, I have this yearning to tell stories. I am a creative, and like, listen, not everybody is going to be able to like make it, but the ones who persevere, the ones who are like are going to write what it takes. Look, I don't know how many scripts you've written, but I've written probably 36 feature films over the last 31 years, 32 years of my life, maybe longer. And that's not nearly enough. I should have written more, because the truth of the matter is, you can write a screenplay in like 4 months, 5 months. Over 30 years, you should be able to write more than 30 screenplays if you really want to do this.
Oh, you know, it's like a job, you're raising a
family. That's the thing. Like, there are always great excuses, but like, I did an assignment like a year ago, maybe a little bit more, and it was the first time that I'd like done like a writing assignment in a long time, and it was like real money. I had to do it, and it was like, I write with a lot of partners too, because like, as you mentioned, I worked for 30 years for Jerry. And so it's sort of like my time was limited, right? I could write on evenings, I could write on weekends. I wrote with partners to try to create more output. But this was during COVID. It was me solo. And it was like, oh, and we need a screenplay in like, 8 weeks. It's like, am I going to be able to write a professional quality screenplay in 8 weeks by myself from ground zero, from scratch, for a professional company? Now, am I going to turn the opportunity down? No way am I going to turn the opportunity. I believe I can do this. So I had to figure that out. I said, okay, this is not just I'm screwing around and I'll get it done whenever the muse hits me. Now it's real. Now I have to figure this out. So I sat down mathematically and I had to figure this out. If I have to write a screenplay every day, I'm going to have to write between 3 and 5 pages. Just will have to do it. And at the end of like a month, at the very least, I'm going to have a first draft. That's 4 weeks. So it's like, I'll have a first draft in 4 weeks, and then I can rewrite it over the next 3 or 4 weeks. That'll be 8 weeks. I'll get it done. But I have to do every day. I have to sit down and write those 3 or 5 pages. And I then said to myself, I'm going to keep a diary while I do this too, just to sort of see when I start writing, how many pages I get done, what I'm thinking about when I'm writing, just as an experiment. And I found that once I sat down and said to myself, every day I have to do this, and money is a good incentive, I got it done in like 5 or 6 weeks. And the first draft was done faster than I thought, because when I was writing 3 to 5 pages a day, I was done in like 24 days or something like that. I got it done pretty quickly.
Reminds me of our friend, you know, Anthony Bagarozzi.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, his brother, I think his name was Chris, was a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony told me that Chris once said when they're making music, there's only two kinds of mixes. There's a butterfly mix and a caterpillar mix. And the butterfly mix is one that just comes out beautifully. It sounds great. And the caterpillar mix is one that it's labor and labor and labor. It takes forever to get it to the point where it's
listenable.
And the point is that the caterpillar mix will still never sound as good as a butterfly mix.
Right, because
and scripts are that way when you're writing the scripts. Some of them are they're just butterflies, and some of them are just caterpillars.
Right,
because it comes down to the concept.
But when you're a professional screenwriter, again, this is the difference between being like, I'm an aspiring screenwriter, which means that my time horizon is infinite, right? I can take as long as I need to write the screenplay. But if you're writing it professionally, if, you know, Amazon comes to you and says, Lucas, we want you to adapt this Japanese anime series. We need a screenplay turned around in 12 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks, and we're going to pay you 150 against 300 for you to do this. Okay, awesome. Now you have to do it, right? Now you have to get that screenplay done in 12 weeks. And that's just it, because you're contractually obligated. You'll find a way, because you've just now been paid $150,000, and you're gonna like find a way to break it down and do it, and you'll stress out and you'll find some way to do it if it gets as far as that. But you know, before you were even hired to do it, you had to have written a screenplay that was good enough to get you the job. And at some point, that's what you did. However long it took you to write that screenplay doesn't matter anymore, because now you have a ticking clock. Right? It might have taken you 6 months to write that script. Now you've got 12 weeks.
Speaking of ticking clocks, I have good news. You're done. We can finish. Just because I have to go pick up my kids.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
But this was very fun, and I think we should make a show. And we should figure out a way to have submissions and then go over people's log lines and even their scripts and give them public feedback, because it'd be free and be way better, and it would promote both of us.
Sure. That sounds great. Have fun with your daughters. I'm going to call my daughter now.
Okay.
This was a blast. And,
thank you, Tron.
We will talk shortly. All
right. And those
and
curtains look really good. I like what you did with your room back.
I appreciate it. I like the light from behind really silhouettes me. All right, Lucas, it was a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Take care. All right.
Bye-bye. Okay. Bye-bye.